I am Layla Whitman. I've known for a long time that I was no longer the welcomed one in the family, but I still didn't think they would go this far. On Wednesday night at 8:27 p.m., I got a message in the family group chat. It was from my sister, Brielle, with the subject, "A Night to Remember." Attached was an image of an invitation, cream background, copper trim, elegant cursive text that read, "Celebrating the 15th wedding anniversary of Brielle and Marcus." I enlarged the image and skimmed through the event details. Time, location, then came the line, hosted by the Monroe and Harrison families. I stopped, scrolled back up. My name wasn't there. No mention of Whitman, not even once. I zoomed in, searching the guest list, the RSVP section, anything that would show I was included in this event. Nothing. The name Layla had been completely erased, like it never existed. This wasn't an oversight. They had deliberately cut me out. Every printed word hit like a slap. Cold, shameless, calculated. A few minutes later, my mother, Carol, added a heart emoji and typed, "Can't wait to see everyone all dressed up and beautiful." That everyone felt sharp. Was I part of everyone? Clearly not. I typed a few words, then deleted them. My fingers were shaking. Finally, I just sent, "I'll be there." Not because I wanted to attend, but because I needed to show up. Sometimes dignity isn't in staying quiet. It's in walking into a room where you're clearly not wanted, with your head held high. I booked my own hotel. No one asked if I was bringing anyone. No one asked if I needed help traveling from Iowa to San Diego. I drove nearly 1,600 miles alone, without a single good luck text from anyone in the family. The party was held at a private coastal club, Seabreeze Club, the same one that appeared in Brielle's wedding photos. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, a white stone walkway leading to a banquet hall that looked pulled from a bridal magazine. I stepped out of my rental sedan in a navy blue dress. Nothing extravagant, but nothing plain either. I passed two teenage girls taking selfies near the lavender bushes by the entrance. One of them whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Is she one of the servers?" I didn't stop. I didn't react. Disdain didn't surprise me anymore. Inside, the hall was filled with soft, golden light. Each table had name cards, gold-embossed invitations, and silk napkins folded into swans. I walked over to the seating chart. Brielle, Marcus, my parents, Dr. Neil and Carol Monroe were placed at the center table. Not listed? I scanned again. Still nothing. Nowhere. An event staff member pointed toward the far end of the room. Near the kitchen exit sat a metal folding chair. No velvet cushion, no flowers, no lighting. On the seat was a disposable napkin and a card with one word, Layla. No last name, no title, no honorific. I sat down, crossed my legs, kept my back straight, and smiled faintly. No one needed to shout, "You don't belong here." They chose to do it with silence. A silence that had been planned meticulously, down to the last detail. And me, like a photo cut out of the family album, was sitting in the middle of a crowded room, utterly alone. I didn't need more proof. That night wasn't just a party. It was a quiet announcement. You're no longer one of us. No one came to sit at my table, not a single greeting, not even a glance of acknowledgement. Even though I was Brielle's own sister, that night I might as well have been one of the backstage crew. Even the tablecloth on my small side table was different. Rough fabric, no embroidery, no candles or lavender arrangements like the others. My glass had no lime wedge on the rim, no pre-poured wine, just a single glass of water, set off-center, like someone had forgotten it there. A little boy, maybe 6 years old, walked past my table, tugged at his father's sleeve, and whispered, "Dad, why is that lady sitting alone?" The man turned away, saying nothing. I kept a composed face, but inside, every buried emotion returned like a crashing wave. Had I ever truly been considered family since our parents passed nearly 5 years ago? Maybe not. Just then, the light softened, and the MC, Chuck, Marcus's college friend, stepped onto the platform with a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to the couple who has inspired us for 15 incredible years, Brielle and Marcus. Applause erupted. I slowly turned, locking eyes with Brielle as she stepped onto the stage in a champagne pink satin gown. Her hair was styled in an elegant bun, pinned with a silver leaf clip. Her expression didn't falter when her eyes passed over me, cold and flawless. Marcus and I want to thank everyone who's been with us since the beginning of building Haven and Hill. Brielle's voice rang out evenly. I listened to every word. The list of acknowledgments was endless. Investors, high school friends, even the neighbor who once dog sat for them. But the name Layla was nowhere to be found. The one who had once wired $8,500 from my personal savings to help them make their first office lease payment. The one who co-signed their startup loan in 2012 when Marcus's credit score wasn't good enough. The one erased from their story. Laughter broke out when Brielle shared a light-hearted story about nearly losing a major order due to a wrong address. People laughed. I stayed still. My heart felt frozen in a block of ice. Each round of applause cut through me like blades. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. I hadn't come here to start a fight, but then I saw it. The deep blue gift box, tied with a dark brown ribbon, the exact color I had chosen because Brielle loved classic tones. I had custom ordered a walnut desk clock, engraved with the words, "Time is a gift, don't use it to forget those who once helped you." I watched Marcus open the box on stage, lift it high, and say loudly, "Emily, you always have such exquisite taste." I froze. Emily, the same best friend of Brielle, who once used me as the purse holder during their Las Vegas trip in 2017, someone who hadn't been there when their company was on the brink of collapse. Yet she was the one getting the credit. I looked down at my water glass, my fingers tightening around the rim. That was the gift I had ordered 3 weeks ago, wrapped at the artisan shop Brielle once praised. I'd handwritten the card, clearly labeled the tag, sealed it myself. Someone had removed my name tag and replaced it with someone else's. I didn't need to ask who did it. I knew. One look at Brielle's bright but empty smile told me everything. To her, I was an inconvenient memory, something that didn't fit the success story she was performing in front of this audience. A server walked by and gently placed a small lemon tart on my table. I nodded in acknowledgement and, without thinking, asked, "Do you know who switched the name tag on that gift box earlier?" He looked uneasy. I just received everything from the prep team, ma'am. All gifts were checked before being brought out by the bride's family. I nodded again, this time without a smile. I understood now. I wasn't forgotten. I had been removed methodically, one step at a time, as if I were the unwanted detail they needed to crop out of a family photo. And strangely, I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. Clearer than ever. I stood up and left the table. No one noticed. Not a single glance followed me. At my own family's event, I moved like a shadow, slipping through the shimmer of chandeliers and bursts of carefree laughter. I didn't head toward the gift table or the stage. Instead, I walked toward the bar, the only space in the hall not tightly choreographed by Brielle's flawless production. I leaned gently against the counter, eyes scanning the cocktails being prepared. A lively group chatted to my left. I tilted my head, thinking of ordering a ginger ale, when a scene froze me in place. Brielle stood at the far end of the bar, clutching a silver handbag, leaning in close to the bartender, a man in his 40s wearing a steel watch and a black apron with the Seabreeze Club logo. I couldn't hear the exchange, but her eyes were locked on a flute glass placed mid-bar. She pointed to it, then tapped the rim lightly with her index finger. A precise, deliberate motion. The bartender quickly added something from a small amber bottle, then topped the drink with a lime wedge. She walked away as if nothing had happened, but I saw it. enough to know that wasn't just a celebratory drink. I stepped back, heart pounding. A young server approached, carrying a tray with 3 cocktails, one of which was the same drink Brielle had just modified. He glanced at a small note tucked in his shirt pocket and began walking toward me. Turned, steadied myself, and casually walked toward Marcus, Brielle's husband, who was standing near the window chatting with an old college friend. As the server passed me, I smiled, gently touched the tray as if about to take a drink, but instead of grabbing the glass meant for me, I switched it with another already sitting on the table next to Marcus. A smooth move. No one noticed. I lifted the swapped glass like I was joining the toast. I took only a small sip, just enough that Marcus wouldn't question it when he returned, and reached for the drink that had been in the same place all along. A few minutes later, I drifted toward the balcony door, leaning near the frame as ocean air breezed in. Amid the violin music and overlapping conversations, I could still hear Marcus's voice from the stage. "Before I hand the mic back to Brielle, I just want to say something," he began, his voice slightly hoarse but steady. I re-entered the hall, blending into the audience, applauding the story of how they met at a summer camp in Montana. Brielle stood beside him, smiling just enough for the cameras. But I noticed she saw me, her gaze pausing when she spotted that I was still holding my drink, untouched. I turned away, slowly made my way to an empty table, set the glass down, and pretended to check my phone. From the stage, Marcus hesitated. His right hand moved to his chest, brows furrowed. He coughed twice, then gave a weak chuckle. "Apologies. Maybe too much sun," he said. But I saw it, the faint layer of sweat beading along his temple. One hand braced the podium, the other pressed against his side. Brielle stepped back half a pace, her face paling for a split second. I watched her lips part as if to say something, but she remained silent. Marcus shook his head, whispered something to the event staff beside him, then stepped off stage and quickly headed toward the hallway leading to the restrooms. I stayed where I was. No one looked my way. No one asked if I knew what was going on, but I knew, and I knew others would soon know too. Brielle, though, she kept smiling, chatting with guests like nothing had happened. Yet her eyes kept scanning the room, searching for me, trying to guess just how much I'd figured out. I picked up my glass again, the one with the special contents, and exited the hall. I didn't run. I walked, slowly, steadily, down a side hallway leading toward the kitchen. The lighting was dimmer there, a few staff members on break nearby. I stood by a window, holding the drink up to the soft light, rotating it in my hand. Its scent wasn't particularly unusual. But what made my skin crawl wasn't the smell. It was the knowledge that someone in my own family had been willing to let me disappear quietly. And that person was still smiling, still hugging guests, still holding a microphone, while the truth sat there, fermenting, in a glass of wine. Marcus returned to the reception about 10 minutes later, his face completely drained of color. The soft golden lighting from the chandeliers made the sweat on his forehead glisten, like he'd just walked through a downpour. His shirt collar was loosened, his tie hung unevenly. His steps were unsteady, his gait off balance, like someone fighting off a wave of nausea. So I stood at the edge of my table, hand resting on the wine glass I should have drunk from. As Marcus passed by, I caught a brief tremble in his hand. A small movement, but enough to tell me his body was sending a warning. Brielle rushed over immediately, grabbing his arm, her face stretched into a tight smile. "Are you okay?" "Probably just the sun and the wine. Don't make a big deal out of it," Marcus replied, trying to chuckle, though his voice was faint and shaky. A nearby guest chimed in. "Might have been the seafood. I heard the clam tart was a little off." I looked up. There had been no seafood served. I remembered the menu clearly. I was the one who had suggested this restaurant to Brielle 3 years ago in an email she now conveniently forgot. Marcus tried to return to the main table, but only managed a few steps before he stopped. He froze, clutching the back of a chair, head lowered, one hand pressed to his stomach, lips tight, his chest rising and falling rapidly. I heard him whisper, I need the restroom, now. The crowd's chatter slowed. The music still played, but no one was really listening anymore. Eyes began following Marcus as he weaved through the rows of chairs, nearly stumbling. I didn't take my eyes off Brielle. She tried to maintain composure, but the tiny crease between her brows betrayed the truth. Her gaze flicked toward the glass I'd left on the side table, the one I never touched, and then her eyes met mine. 1 second, 2 seconds. We stared at each other. I didn't blink. Neither did she. But her lips tightened, and in that instant, I knew. Marcus had drunk the wrong glass. I slowly picked up the wine, swirling it gently, watching the bubbles clinging to the rim. A faint scent of lime and something else, sharp, oddly sweet, like a burnt herb, lingered. No one else knew what was happening, but I did. And so did Brielle. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to point. I only needed her to witness the consequences of the plan she had crafted. Marcus disappeared behind the restroom door. A few concerned guests discreetly followed. None of them returned after 5 minutes. A server rushed from the hallway to the stage, whispering something to the MC. Chuck, Marcus's longtime friend, quickly grabbed the mic, trying to calm the crowd. Folks, just a small hiccup. Marcus is feeling a little under the weather and will rest for a bit. Please continue enjoying the evening. We'll resume the speeches shortly. A few murmurs rippled through the room. Most guests lowered their voices. Some checked their watches, but no one knew what was quietly cracking beneath the glossy surface of this evening. I stepped up to the bar. The bartender was wiping glasses with a white towel. I set my untouched glass in front of him and held his gaze. "Who gave you this glass?" He hesitated, then said, "I was just following instructions from the bride. She asked for a special celebratory glass, specifically for the sister." I nodded, said nothing more, and walked away. Behind me, I heard the clinking of glassware, a harmless sound, but to me, it rang like metal on a mirror. On stage, Brielle was trying to recover the mood. She lifted a fresh glass and said, "On behalf of both of us, thank you all for coming. Marcus is fine. It's just that he's been working too hard lately." Her voice still sounded sweet, but her eyes had changed. No one else noticed, only me, the one person who knew she wasn't addressing the guests. She was talking to me. A last-minute warning. But I didn't respond. I simply smiled, faint and slow, then turned and walked back to my seat. The piano continued to play softly, as if trying to smooth over the tension left in the air after Marcus's sudden disappearance. I returned to my seat, back straight, fingers resting lightly on a fresh glass of water. Not the old wine glass, but one the server had just brought over. Still, I didn't drink it. I didn't want to miss a single glance that had started circling the room. Everyone remained polite, but I could see the unease behind their eyes. Some whispered in hushed tones, others looked visibly unsettled. No one seemed to understand what was truly happening, and that confusion only made the party more suffocating. Then suddenly, Brielle stepped onto the stage. The constant smile she'd worn all night was gone, replaced with a tightened expression and eyes that shimmered, not with joy, but something closer to panic. She didn't hold a microphone. She didn't need to. The room had already gone silent. "I need to say something," she began. Her voice trembled but rang out high and clear enough to make everyone lower their utensils. All eyes turned toward the stage. "I know tonight is meant to be a celebration, and I truly don't want to ruin that, but I can't pretend anymore." I stared at her, my heart slowed by one beat. I knew exactly what was coming. My husband, Marcus, nearly collapsed. His body reacted to something in his drink, and after speaking with the bartender, she paused, just long enough for every head to turn and look directly at me. "I have to ask, did someone at this party intentionally try to harm him?" No one said a word. A chilling silence took hold. She took a deep breath and continued. "I don't want to name anyone, but there was a cocktail made specially on request for my sister, Layla." I didn't blink. The room suddenly felt colder, even though the AC had been on low since the event began. And that drink, according to the server, was switched. Brielle's voice cracked slightly, her face now tight with emotion. And the person who drank it was my husband. Gasps rippled through the room like an overturned beehive. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." An older woman to my left whispered to her husband, "What's going on? Layla? Is that true?" I didn't stand. I didn't protest. Not yet. Brielle stepped down from the stage, her eyes locking onto mine like a cold hook. "Layla, if I'm wrong, you're welcome to stand up and clarify." Her tone remained soft, but every syllable carried the same message. "If you stay silent, you're guilty." I glanced around. No one spoke up for me. Not my stepmother, Carol, who once hugged me after I lost my job last year. Not Uncle Alex, the one I lent $4,200 to repair his roof. Not even Audrey, my childhood friend who sat near the stage with her eyes fixed on her plate, pretending she didn't know me. I swallowed a slow breath of air. "So let me get this straight," I said evenly, voice steady. "You're suggesting that your sister put something in a drink and then switched it so your husband would end up drinking it?" No one answered, not even Brielle dared to confirm it out loud. I stood up. A few guests shifted uncomfortably as if bracing for me to lash out, but I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I don't feel the need to defend myself to people who've already decided to believe the first version of a story they heard. I turned fully toward Brielle. "But I do have a question." She pressed her lips together, silent. I nodded slowly. "If you truly thought I was a threat, why did you invite me here?" She didn't answer. The room was dead quiet. "And if you were worried about your husband's safety, why did you let him drink the cocktail that was supposedly made just for me?" No one laughed, no one clapped, no one stood by me, but I could feel it, that the silence was no longer agreement. It was doubt, beginning to stir in every confused glance. I set my glass of water back on the table, then turned to the server who had just re-entered near the door. "Can you retrieve the cocktail from earlier?" I asked calmly. "I believe we'll need to keep it." My voice was soft, but it was enough to make Brielle flinch. I had no hard evidence, not yet. But I had a spine that wouldn't fold, and an intuition that had never failed me. If they'd written a script to take me down, they'd eventually trip over their own lines. I left the party at 8:45 p.m. No one stopped me, no one called after me. My footsteps echoed steadily down the white stone corridor leading to the parking lot, and with each step, instead of pain, I felt lighter, clearer. I unlocked my phone, expecting nothing more than an empty screen. But the message was already waiting. No sender ID, just a simple line. I saw everything, and I have it on video. Below was a video link and a warning: do not open in public. I got into my car, locked the doors, and turned off the cabin lights. My heart beat steady and slow. I tapped the link. The screen lit up, grainy at first, then sharpened. The Seabreeze bar, filmed from a rear security camera, most likely pulled from the venue's internal system. I saw Brielle step into frame, no mistaking the copper-pink dress. She glanced around, then reached into her clutch, pulling out a small amber bottle. She unscrewed the cap, poured a few drops into a waiting champagne flute, then slid it toward the bartender with a soft smile like a coastal breeze. I didn't breathe for nearly 30 seconds, my eyes locked on her movements, precise, practiced, like she'd done this before. The next clip rolled. Marcus, smiling, clinking glasses with a few guests, then taking a full sip. And a third clip, me, in the distance, near the buffet table, holding a completely different glass. I leaned back against the seat, exhaled deeply. What I felt wasn't anger. It was conviction. Like a door, long locked, from the inside, had finally cracked open. Before I even closed the video, a second message arrived. "My name is Jenna. I used to work with Brielle at Haven and Hill." "You're not the only one they erased." I replied instantly. "Can you call me?" The call came 3 minutes later. Jenna's voice was quiet, steady, and without hesitation. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I used to be the lead creative when we launched the company. I designed the original media strategy, But when they started pitching for Series C funding, my name vanished from every record, just like yours. I stayed silent. She continued. Brielle told me a cleaner image makes investors more confident. Then every photo, every document with me in it disappeared. But I kept a copy of the original formation documents with both our names. Do you want it? I whispered. I want everything. She sent me a PDF. I opened it. My eyes stopped at the fourth line. Layla Whitman, co-founder, 35% equity. I remembered it vividly, 2016. The night Brielle showed up at my tiny apartment in Des Moines near 10 p.m., crying. Marcus had lost a major contract. The company was on the verge of collapse, she said. If this doesn't work, my dream dies. But if you invest in me, I swear I'll never forget. I wired $28,000 the next morning. No contracts, no lawyer, just trust. Now I opened another file, a shareholder update from last year that I'd secretly screenshotted from one of their bank statements. The bolded text read, Earn ownership, Marcus Harrison 55%, Brielle Harrison 45%. Not a single word about me, not a footnote, not even a thank you. I sat up straighter. The night sky outside was still dark, but something inside me had started to glow. Not fury, but clarity. I forwarded the video to my old attorney, Richard Mendez, who handled my lease dispute last year, along with a brief note. I was poisoned, I have proof, and I'm ready to go public. 7 minutes later, Richard called. Layla, this isn't just criminal, this is high-level financial fraud. I'll handle the legal side, what about you? I smiled for the first time in the past 12 hours. I'm going to rewrite the story they tried to erase. Dinner at Brielle's house was held 2 days after the party. A small, casual family dinner, as the invitation claimed, but in my chest, there was nothing casual about it. I arrived on time, carrying a single cloth bag. Inside it was only one thing, a mini projector. The dining room was meticulously decorated, Brielle still obsessed over every candle, every lavender sprig perfectly matching the napkin tones. She sat at the head of the table. Next to her was Marcus, still pale, forcing a weak smile when he saw me walk in. My stepmother, Louise, was chatting with Uncle Alex about the weather. Audrey arrived late, bringing a homemade loaf of bread. No one mentioned the party. No one looked at me for more than 3 seconds. I took the seat to Brielle's right, keeping my expression calm. In that room, the one who knew the most was the one who said the least. Me. Dinner crawled by. The appetizer was kale salad with pistachios and orange segments. The main course, herb-crusted salmon, but no one truly cared about the food. Just as Brielle stood to refill Louise's wine, I gently placed the projector on the table. Would anyone mind if I showed something for a few minutes? I said it like I was asking to pass the salt, but every motion in the room came to a halt. Brielle turned, her jaw twitching slightly, but she forced a smile. Layla, tonight isn't really the time for the past. I didn't answer. I pressed play. The white wall behind Brielle lit up. The footage I'd watched in my car began to play. Unedited, no cuts, no fast forward. The glass, the hand, the amber bottle. Each motion precise. Brielle's face clearly visible under the dim light. No one moved. Marcus put his fork down. Audrey covered her mouth with her hand. Louise shook her head slowly. I let the video run to the end. No need to rewind, no need to repeat. When the screen went dark, no one looked down at their plates again. I spoke, steady, not loud, but clear. Didn't come here for revenge. I came to reclaim my voice. I turned to Brielle. You once said you'd never forget what I did for you, for Haven and Hill. But you did. You didn't just forget, you erased me. From the equity, from the license, from every legal record. Then I looked at Marcus. You once called me the foundation holder in our first shareholders meeting. But when I disappeared from the documents, you stayed silent. I pulled a printed copy of the original formation contract from my bag. Jenna had sent it. I handed it to Louise, who sat closest to me. 35%. That's the share I used to hold. Riel clenched her fists. Shh, I don't know who got that footage, that video. I cut her off, not harshly, but sharp enough to sever the escape route. No one needed to get it. It's from the venue's internal security system. They released it to my lawyer under investigation request. Silence again. But this time, the kind that comes when there's nothing left to deny. Marcus stood slowly. You really did this, Brielle. Riel turned to him for the first time, visibly rattled. I just wanted to keep everything clean. Layla was always a threat. I nodded. Yes. I was a threat to the fantasy you built on lies. Louise reached over and gently squeezed my hand. A small gesture, but to me, it felt like the first breeze of a new season. I gathered the papers, turned off the projector, and stood up. No one stopped me. No one said goodbye. I turned back one last time and said, I don't need an apology. I don't need your confession. I just need to be seen. Then I walked out of that room like someone stepping out of smoke. Not coughing, not choking, just clearer than ever. 1 week after the dinner at Brielle's house, truths no one ever dared to speak began spreading like spilled ink on a white tablecloth. It started with a short post on a startup investor forum. Internal alert. Haven and Hill suspected of equity fraud during pre-Series A. 3 hours later, their website went into maintenance mode. The next day, the Southwest Women's Support Fund released a statement suspending all funding for Brielle Harrison's projects, citing lack of transparency and ethical violation. Then, Marcus left. Quietly, no suitcase, no farewell letter, just a text at 3:18 a.m. I'm sorry I stayed silent for so long. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Over the next 3 weeks, the media started mentioning Brielle's name. Some called her the executive ousted in a silent scandal. Others unearthed that she had pushed out 2 co-founders from the company structure back in 2018. Jenna and I didn't need to speak. The documents did it for us. I left Des Moines. I chose a small town near Asheville, where the forests of North Carolina are quiet and the air is clean enough to breathe deeply. I rented an old wooden cabin on a hillside with a balcony facing the pine trees. I spent the first month doing nothing. Just walking, making tea, writing in a journal, letting my mind settle after the storm. Then I began to write. Not about Brielle, but about the women turned into footnotes in someone else's story. The ones called supporters, helpers, the ones who stood by during hard times, but never named on the front page. The ones intentionally edited out. I called a project the second line, the line that was skipped, the story erased from the first draft. The website I built wasn't a blog. It became a repository of testimonies, evidence, legal documents, and, most importantly, a space for anyone who had ever been called a silent threat to finally speak. In the first 6 months, I received over 300 emails. One was from a researcher cut from her own doctoral thesis by her advisor, her ex-boyfriend. Another from an office worker who found out her sister transferred the entire family inheritance to her nephew, claiming she didn't need the money. A single mother deleted from her ex-husband's company records even though she built the entire client management system. I didn't rescue them. I helped them record the truth. We held our first gathering at the Cedar Ridge Community Center. No flowers, no cameras. Just a circle of 20-something chairs, each person given a sheet of paper and a pencil. I stood in the center of the room, no microphone. We're not here to name others, we're here to name ourselves. One older woman burst into tears as she read her opening line. I used to think I was invisible. Turns out, I was written in white ink. We applauded. The rhythm was uneven, but it was real. By month 9, the second line was invited to collaborate with 3 regional universities to integrate this narrative recovery model into support programs for female students. An independent journal called me the curator of buried memory. I didn't give interviews, I let the site speak for me. I still live in that little house. Every morning, I make coffee, check emails, and spend at least an hour reading someone's story. I never let them go unanswered. Once, Brielle sent a short email, no subject line, just one sentence. I used to think I controlled the story. I marked it as read, didn't reply. Because now, silence isn't surrender, it's a boundary. One autumn afternoon, during a small gathering under the porch at the center, a 10-year-old girl tugged my sleeve. "Are you the lady who rewrites stories for the forgotten?" I smiled. I don't rewrite, I help them find their place. And maybe, after everything, that's what survival really looks like. Not screaming to be seen, but standing still long enough for the truth to find its way back to light. Layla's story is a reminder that sometimes betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the very people who once called us family. But she refused to let silence suffocate her voice. With unwavering resolve and proof in hand, Layla didn't just expose a scheme, she turned pain into purpose, building a space for those erased from their own stories. In real life, justice doesn't always come from courtrooms. It comes from the courage to stand up and refuse to let someone else rewrite your truth. What do you think about Layla's journey? What would you do in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, real-life stories about family, dignity, and truth.